And we're live. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to our home. Aisha and Dean here. We're going to talk about a very important topic today, kind of controversial. So
it doesn't have to be. They're making it controversial.
Agreed. We're actually coming live to you from our kitchen. This is our kitchen counter. This is where we raise our kids. This is where we solve our daily problems. And we thought that it would be great to talk about something that is very important in our opinion as far as brain health is concerned from our kitchen. Yeah. So
there's a lot of controversy, and the controversy is being created because it's an easy way to get attention, to create a following. When you say something controversial, we know that that's the world we live in. Facts are not always popular. Science is not always popular. Imperfect, data-driven decision-making is not always popular. But that's where we live. And one thing we've decided is it's not that just food that we're going to talk about, and exercise and lifestyle, but decision-making. And it doesn't mean that we know it. Challenge us. Talk to us. Argue with us. That's the foundation of all the progress. If there is no conversation, just today we were talking about how conversations are silenced by calling names, by appeal to authority, appeal to any kind of bias you can think of. Conversation ultimately is the most important thing, and especially when it comes to health, especially when it comes to the most important thing, which is food that makes your body, your brain, every second, every minute.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the specific topic that we're talking about is ketogenic diet. So ketogenic diet has been purported as a healthy diet, a healthy solution for a lot of diseases, including brain diseases, prevention of neurological and degenerative diseases. And there's such fervor and such passion about it, and we understand that.
Yeah, that's fine. Passion is great.
So the whole purpose of this talk today is for us to present the data and to show you what has been published over the last few decades as far as the healthiest diet for the mind and the body is concerned.
And there's no way we can do it all. It's impossible. There are thousands of papers, thousands of documents on both sides, although ironically on the ketogenic side, as it pertains to outcomes, there's very little. There's some on seizures, some on cognitive improvement temporarily, but beyond that, we look at this, there isn't much. Yet it's almost that conspiracy theory kind of a thing on the vexercise, anti-vax, vaccine. It's if there's somebody saying something controversial and new, and others from the regular institutions are not supporting it, it must be a conspiracy silencing it. There isn't. The data on nutrition is 100 years old, if not longer. Well, the data-driven information is quite long, and hundreds and thousands of articles on nutrition and what kind of nutrition works for health in general and brain. In our book, Alzheimer's Solution, which we're not overstating, we're not saying we're curing Alzheimer's. We're saying basically that we're helping for those who are early enough or who have risk in their family to push back the disease. And there's nothing controversial about that. We're just giving data behind that. We're telling you that within normal life, what can you do? And after that, after age of 80, what can be done?
Absolutely.
But it's all about nutrition, lifestyle, and what happens in your home.
Absolutely. So with that, let's talk about what is actually a ketogenic diet. Ketogenic diet is essentially a diet that is very high in fat, very high in protein, and very, very low in carbohydrates.
Ideally, less than 5%.
Agreed. So 95% of your diet comes from essentially fats. It's a combination of animal fat and plant fats. And a lot of times when people actually try to understand what ketogenic diet is, it looks like something that has a lot of meat and a lot of poultry and eggs and oil and very little sources of carbohydrate, which includes a lot of fruits and vegetables as well.
And tacitly, everybody kind of said it's bacon and steak, and well, who doesn't like that diet? And you will fight for that diet, and especially if you've lived with that diet, that's something to defend.
Agreed. Yes, absolutely.
Self-fulfilling. Yeah.
At a cellular level, when somebody adheres to a ketogenic diet, it's something like going through starvation.
Yes.
So you're basically starving your body, and instead of glucose, your body starts to use alternative sources of energy.
So you have about how much in your muscle that you store glycogen? 2 pounds?
About 2 pounds,
And
yes.
with water, that's about 6 to 10 pounds.
Agreed,
Because
yes.
it's bound.
Exactly. So, and that's why a lot of people actually lose a lot of weight within the first 2 or 3 days, or maybe within a week of being on a ketogenic diet, because along with the energy source of your body, you lose a lot of water with it as well. So it's a lot of water weight. And then the body starts using these ketone bodies that are released. And the ketone bodies are used by brain cells. Let's talk about brain health.
Mitochondria directly.
Specifically, yes. Mitochondria, which are the energy plants of your cell, can use ketone bodies much easier than it can use glucose.
Correct.
And so for the first few days or the first few even weeks,
yes.
actually people feel better because it's readily available.
Correct. For glucose to be accepted into the cells, there needs to be a receptor that has to be turned on either by insulin or other receptor gatekeepers, and then the sugar goes in. For ketone, it can go directly, so it's a shortcut.
Exactly.
And so there's a boost, and people feel like there's a boost. And that's been actually extrapolated beyond that momentary gain to stand for something like chronic disease prevention.
Exactly.
All the way to depression and PTSD and all kinds, where there's no data on all of this.
Absolutely. So this has been purported by a large group of people as a brain healthy diet, or a diet that actually helps you lose weight and things of that nature. And there's some very, very passionate people who follow this diet.
We've experienced that.
Yes, we did. And we understand that food can be very personal. I mean, for us, food brings everybody around the table. It's something that you celebrate with. It's something that you feel better about.
Yes.
And so we understand why people are very passionate about a particular diet. But it's also very important that we live in a day and age where diseases like Alzheimer's disease have become rampant.
Yes.
And we deal with it on a day-to-day basis.
Literally 70 to 80% increase in prevalence in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And from our experience, from data, yes, part of it is because the population is aging, but a greater part is lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no doubt of that.
So it's very important to actually just talk about the facts and talk about what the data has shown as far as this diet is concerned. Now, it's almost ridiculous to say that a high-fat diet can be compared to a low-carb diet. There actually isn't anything like that to begin with. When you categorize a big macronutrient as bad and another one as good, that's not how it works, because there are different types of that.
Correct.
There are different types of carbohydrates. So a low-carb diet is meaningless. A high-carb diet is meaningless. A low-fat diet versus a high-fat diet is meaningless. There are different types of macronutrients that are good and bad for you, and it's important for all of us to understand what is good and what is bad, and what can we do on a daily basis to increase the ones, work towards increasing the good ones, and work toward eliminating the bad ones.
In fact, we have terms like WTE and WTI.
And that's what we've actually described in our book, and we're really proud of it, because it's very complex than just, clinging to a particular micronutrient.
It is. I mean, complexity is always something that's shunned. It's easy to say, just eat meats. Why is that popular? That's why you see all these 20, 30-year-old bodybuilders having these million-person following, and they just push these one little nutrient, one little molecule, It's not like that.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. It's a little more complex. It's food groups. And yes, you have to reduce the simple sugars and also take care of the complex carbohydrates. You don't want to go out of control. And reduce the fats. But if you're going to have fats, it should be the saturated, eliminate the saturated fats and stay with mono and polyunsaturated fats if you have to. So it's complex. And it's not just a binary thing, all or none. It's working to increase WTI and working to eliminate.
Absolutely.
That's the pattern, and that's the whole point of the book. And our passion comes from our communities where we see the difference. Those who claim these things, none of them have worked at the community level the way we have.
Yeah.
We live in a place, Loma Linda, where we have the healthiest people in the world. The blue zones, the center of blue zones, Loma Linda. The people live, this is well documented, 100,000 people JAMA peer-reviewed documentation. They live 10 years longer and healthier than everybody else. But around Loma Linda, when it comes to San Bernardino, the unhealthiest, the population is not much different as far as genetic background. It's lifestyle. And we're actually doing this in other communities as well. And the lowest denominator of change is not the person where I see you in the clinic. Yeah, I do the cursory pulse, blood pressure, and then at the door say, by the way, eat healthy. It happens in your homes. That's why we're here. It happens in your clinic, in your communities, in your kitchen. The book, 100% of it goes back to the profits go back to the communities. That's where healthcare is. The rest is disease care.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I went on a digression, but that's my passion.
I think it's really important to have a premise of what the talk is all about. So coming back to the details about ketogenic diet and why we feel that it's actually a diet that is completely ruining our health. I'm going to be honestly clear about that. It's not even an opinion. There is so much data out there, and we've known for decades, since 1993, I would say, when the most prominent paper came out in a very respectable journal that said, if you eat a lot of whole foods that have no labels, that is not processed, and if you eat plants, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, and the fats that are derived from plants, you live a long, healthy life, and you can actually prevent a lot of the chronic diseases of aging, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, dementia, and everything else that is a spectrum of those diseases. And a diet that is high in animal fats, beef, chicken, pork, even dairy products and eggs, that is associated with poor outcomes, poor cardiovascular health, and early onset of chronic diseases of aging.
And right there, those who are dogmatic about these things, oh, no, that's it. The egg eaters will say that it's not about, this is the beauty of science. It's not dependent on, there is no authority in science.
Yeah, it's not an opinion. We're just, the beauty of science is the data is there. So, even if it's not perfect, let's just talk about that.
Yes.
Data is never perfect. The epidemiological studies have a lot of flaws.
There's no causality.
We never imply any causality. But when you get similar results over and over and over again in a lot of the large populations, you name it, we deal with this on a regular basis, being epidemiologists and neurologists.
And clinicians.
Nurses Health Study, the Health Professional Follow-Up Study, the Adventist Health Study, of course, the California Teacher Study, and all of these large databases where thousands and thousands of people are followed for decades, for 20, 30 years. And then you look at patterns. You look at patterns of dietary intake, and you follow them over a year to see how they do. Almost all of them actually do very, very well on a whole food plant-based diet.
And it's interesting. This is a nice little, I call cognitive jujitsu. The alternative side says, well, this is not perfect data. And then they hold you to that lack of perfect data, which is ecological, retrospective, some prospective data. But on their own side, they don't have the same expectation.
Exactly.
And there's no data.
Exactly.
We have population studies after population studies. We've seen post-World War II where populations, we call it the affluence paradox, in countries in China and India, where people were doing well and then they became affluent and the diet changed to a more fat-based, saturated fat and also sugars and everything. All of a sudden, the chronic diseases became rampant. There is no question when it comes to those kind of data. Do we have causal data? There is no causal data in science, and we're okay with that.
Yeah. And on the other side, the ketogenic diet, or a diet that is high in fat and high in protein and very low in carbohydrates, that is promoted by bloggers, by journalists, and by anyone who just,
actually, the biggest, most popular one was the journalist. It's just decided to write something.
They call themselves the, experts in science, and then they start blogging and dispersing all these messages about, diet and how it should affect health. They usually see a very short span of time of how this particular diet affects it. Like I said earlier, for a short period of time, it actually helps you. And that's how we have evolved. Humanity, human beings, our bodies evolved to withstand long periods of starvation. So if we don't take carbohydrates or if we don't take energy, our body has mechanisms to use different sources of energy to keep us going. But is that going to perpetuate life? Is that going to make us live a long a cognitively healthy long life? I don't think so, and there's no real data for that.
In fact, that's their argument, that starvation is a protective mechanism, and eating a high-fat diet is a form of a starvation. When are we going to, why would we use a model where the average person lived up to age 20 and died as our model for long-term sustaining of brain health past the age of 60, 70? That's not our model. Our model is a more comprehensive, plant-based, low sugar, well, definitely simple sugars, low simple sugars, and low-fat diet that we can actually make very tasty, very healthy. That's the key. That's where the effort should be spent. And that by itself can change our healthcare system, not just for Alzheimer's, heart disease, and every other chronic disease by 80 to 90%. One of the people that actually endorsed us was Dr. Colin Campbell, which did the largest study in the epidemiological study, the China study. He's written a wonderful thing about us and about the book, but most importantly about why this kind of lifestyle works at large scale population level. And the most important paper done in 1990 by Dean Ornish, another friend of ours, who showed that when you put people at risk on a diet which is plant-based and whole food, that they actually reverse their cardiovascular disease. In fact, that was the first great study, a well-documented, well-done study that showed that you can actually reverse disease. That reversal is significantly more pertinent when it comes to brain, which is under constant attack, using 25% of the body's energy.
Absolutely. And so, you know, the message that we want to disperse today is that diets don't work. It has to be a lifestyle. And the type of lifestyle that has helped us understand the relationship we have with food over and over again is this. If we eat a whole food plant-based diet, food that doesn't have any label, meaning not processed, and food that is wholesome, we don't have to worry about our protein, we don't have to worry about fat, we don't have to worry about carbohydrates, period. We live at a day and age that it is very easy for us to eat unhealthy foods. There's vending machines, there are restaurants that promote fried foods, there is a lot of fat, there's a lot of sugar in
everything. There's fat and sugar.
Exactly. So that's why we're trying to tweak and see what actually works for us. Like I said earlier, we know since 1990s, since 1980s actually, or even going back to the 1950s from Dr. Ansel Keys' studies, that a whole food plant-based diet works. And we can actually prevent 80 to 90% of disease. The rest, you know, trainers or journalists or bloggers coming in and telling you, you know, sprouted beans is much better than regular beans, or for example, you know, alkalization of the blood is much better than acidification, which I really don't understand it very well as of yet. That really, you know, it's for those people that actually want to tweak and personalize their diet.
And please don't fall for appeal to authority, appeal to masses, because if it's those things, we will fall for a lot of things. But for thousands of years, we have done the appeal to authority where somebody says, I'm the authority, and we followed it. Or there is no authority in science. Only the latest data that's been validated and supported by multiple other data.
And data changes.
And data changes.
So
and
we have to be on top of it.
On top of it, exactly. Or appeal to masses. You know, I have, somebody came on our blog the other day and says, I have a 20-something young lady who would go back, I have thousands of people following me and doing this, and they feel good. Well,
and they kind of made fun of us not having followers. It's not really about followers.
We don't really,
and not having.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's about the fact that we are here in the battleground, doing the work in the clinic, in the community, doing the research, all of that, and promulgating a more complex but true and evolving information. And the evolving information that's there right now says plant-based whole food diet works for all end organs, like brain, heart, and everything else. Why we actually left it, why ketogenic diet might be bad. So when you rely too much on high-fat, low-carb diets, what happens is initially, like we said, there is a response, and there's no question of that, both weight loss and a sense of energy. But long-term, we know for a fact that there's accumulation of fat in the liver, there's accumulation of fatty streaks in the arteries and veins, and arteries mostly, and especially in the brain, because the number of vasculature in the brain is much more, especially microvasculature, and the damage is done. The only thing that ketogenic diet has been temporarily shown to be beneficial for is in certain, not all, in certain types of seizure, and that's even there it's as a shock because the alkaline structure has changed, so the cells that would usually be instigated to seize would be stopped.
Exactly.
But that's under a very specific situation. It's not even a healthy response.
And it's actually not a long-term solution
It
either.
isn't.
It's only for a short-term solution where you want to control it. And for certain people, they always make some tweaks to add some carbohydrates because it's just not sustainable.
It bewilders me that how we close our eye to data and either find appeal to masses, authority, or conspiracy. Like there's a group of healthcare AMA that's trying to hide things. There isn't anything like that we know of. At least we're not part of it. And the reality is the data has shown that you can reverse cardiovascular disease and brain on our side. We've seen this in our communities. The populations that live a whole food, plant-based diet have a much lower risk of dementia and Alzheimer's in particular. And those that don't suffer profoundly from it, profoundly. We've seen it over and over and over again. And we're actually instituted, most of the money that goes into San Bernardino County, will be going to San Bernardino County educational programs, and LA and Orange County and others, and hopefully throughout the world. But that's where we are. The data for ketogenic diet, high-fat food is not only not there, it's harmful. And a few people like Dr. Hyman, when you hear the whole talk, you actually see that they say, oh, but it's good to not eat a lot of meat and stuff because it's not good for environment, it's also ethics and all that. And well, then where's the argument? Then where's the... So if we don't have the data, and at the same time we are also couching, and then where's the argument? So I think it's really critical that we take a stand here because it's the healthcare system in general.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So bottom line, the message is, so far we know that a whole food plant-based diet, which essentially means that plants are good for you. Vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds are good for you. And any source of meat, or sources of fats that come from, that come from animals, whether it's meat, whether it's cream, butter, lard, pork, chicken, eggs, they've actually been associated with poor outcomes as far as brain health is concerned.
And there's a gradient. Of course, it's not binary. In fact, in our book,
absolutely. So
you've
the
laid it out.
80-20 rule, the 80-20 rule.
Yes.
80% of the time, if you can, eat plants, and then 20% of the time, go ahead and do whatever you want.
Well, not whatever. You can't be... I went to Tennessee, I had fried Twinkies.
Right.
I have to say it was interesting,
well,
but not
that's true. So try to be as healthy as possible. And that's why you and I don't really believe in the concept of moderation, you know? A lot of our patients say, well, a balanced diet is good for you. Let's just do everything in moderation. Moderation is a very dangerous word because moderation might mean completely something different for you compared to me.
Yeah.
Moderation for somebody who smokes 2 packs of cigarette might mean one pack of cigarette a day, and it might mean not being around secondhand smoke for me.
Exactly.
So it's a very dangerous word when we try to shy away from it. But it's also important to kind of set a standard of what's good for you on a regular basis.
Exactly, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll go into more detail of the mechanisms of ketogenic diet versus the standard, not diet, but lifestyle, and how it works in the body in another talk. Yeah. At this point, I think it's a little too much detail.
It is too much detail, and we'll talk about that. And if you go and read our book, I think Dean and I have done a good job at just sorting out through the diet research and nutrition research, and kind of putting everything in there for you and giving you lots and lots of examples of what's been out there. And we've put references that you can actually go and check for yourself. And we're not really pushing a particular diet per se. We're trying to give you the data of what is out there and let you understand it better. And I think more important than that, yeah, so this is a page of our book which actually describes a spectrum of food. All of us want to be in the good zone, and then there's an intermediate zone, and then there's a dangerous zone. And it's okay to go to the dangerous zone once in a while. But if you live, put your toe in the dangerous zone every once in a while. But if you live 95% of your time in the green zone or the good zone, I think you're going to live a very good life.
I think this is the most valuable.
Exactly.
And it comes from data.
Yes. And we've also gone into detail of how a healthy lifestyle doesn't really mean deprivation.
No,
it's not deprivation
not at
all. Healthy food, healthy lifestyle can be a lot of fun. And that's what we're passionate about, and that's what we shared with you in the book.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and move on because we're running out of time. There are some really good questions from our audience and the ones that actually posted us. One of them actually posted and said, "Dear Dr. Sherzais, my doctor and my trainer have always been pushing ketogenic diet for weight loss and for health. What should I do?"
Again, I go back to the same thing, not just your doctor. We've had people say, and sometimes people exaggerate. We understand the nature of conversations. And they say, I have lots of followers and I have multiple doctors. Doesn't matter. Don't even listen to us. It's not about authority. This is some of the arguments we make. Forget about appeal to authority, appeal to numbers, appeal to the past. It's about where the data is. Please check the data yourself. The data, according to people who have done reviews, comprehensive reviews that have been validated in large peer-reviewed papers and journals, not in a newspaper like, we're not going to name a newspaper, where a journalist then summarizes their understanding and all of a sudden goes viral because he or she made an interpretation.
I can name the magazine, that's okay. I think in Times, was it?
Yeah.
The cover of Time magazine showed that butter is good for you. Or butter is back, something of that nature.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
And you got to read the article, and we got to read who wrote it and where is their data. Not at all. So the reality is the data is what should promote the direction, and the data is clear among well-documented centers. Dr. Colin Campbell, Dean Ornish, were the other people that have supported us.
Absolutely.
Dr.
David Katz.
Michael Greger.
Yes.
Michael Katz is amazing, and others. What they do is they take the data, they summarize it, and distribute it in a very, so pardon the pun, palatable manner, where you can actually see the data, see the flaws in the data, more importantly.
Absolutely.
We always say that you respect the paper, that in their limitation section, in every paper, scientific paper, there's a limitation. They actually eviscerated themselves more than anybody else could.
They note their flaws. They actually say what the flaws of the paper is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be wonderful if all of us got into a habit of reading the paper rather than an interpretation by a journalist in a magazine. And I know that for some of us, we're not really into the habit of that, but it would be wonderful if everybody had access to that data and tried to interpret their own results.
And by the way, we're open to discussion and even logical, reason-based arguments. So if you have any questions or dismay or discomfort and you want to discuss it, that's the basis of change. That's the basis of promoting. Even if we know a certain amount about plant-based whole food diet, it's not the end. It must evolve. It must become more personalized. That's another thing we push for.
Absolutely.
It has to be a personalized. So that's where conversations come in, which promote a certain types of research.
Yes. Ben says, be careful of when labels say organic, not that reliable. I agree with them on plant-based diet. Now thanks Ben, this is a very important point. A lot of us actually go into this rabbit hole of health. Sometimes, we get so engrossed in, what to eat and what not to eat, organic versus unorganic, and then starting the idea that it's all the chemicals that actually are affecting us. It's not the food, it's actually the chemical in the food that is affecting us. That, raw food, raw milk, raw cheese, what do you call the beef? The free-range beef, grass-fed beef is actually good for you.
That's a very, sexy concept, grass-fed, as if all the metabolism all of a sudden changes because it was grass-fed. Not recognizing the outcome product.
Yeah, even if meat doesn't have a streak of fat in it, the meat cells themselves are made of cholesterol. Our bodies do not need cholesterol. We actually make cholesterol, enough that is necessary for bodily function. And if we replace our meals with a plant-based diet, we're gold. So let's not get lost into the small nuances that people actually try to project and confuse the situation. And I agree, there's a lot of clutter, there's a lot of noise out there. Organic, we don't push it too much. Yes, it's important to eat organic food, but don't try to ruin good for the reason of for the sake of
perfection.
Perfection are the best. So just eat plants. And then the other question is, egg was bad for so long. Nowadays it is good. Again, this is because of all the noise and the clutter out there. Eggs were never good. One egg actually has more than the amount of 250 grams of cholesterol, and our body can tolerate only that. So one egg goes beyond what your body actually needs as far as cholesterol is concerned. And I mean, it's unnecessary. So if you can replace it with plant foods, that's much better.
Again, if you're very much into certain foods, our approach is not a binary one, overnight change. No, it's small steps where you see your success happening. That's where you should make the change. As soon as you see success in that area, then you can go to the next. One area that we actually fight for more than any other, even more than keto, is sugar, which we've spoken in previous talks. But one small step and going from there.
Absolutely. The other question is a high protein diet healthy in the long run? I say we shouldn't even worry about protein. You know, plants give us plenty of protein. A high protein diet is actually not good for you. It's not good for your kidneys. In the long run, it changes your metabolism a lot.
And the toxic byproducts that it produces for the brain is known, well known.
As a matter of fact, there's been a paper that came out that compared animal protein versus plant proteins, and plant proteins did much better as far as heart disease, diabetes, cholesterol, and dementia is concerned.
And for God's sakes, don't worry if you're getting enough protein. Just go search the internet and see the biggest bodybuilders are plant-based bodybuilders. There's plenty of protein in the food that around you, any food. Unless you're becoming a world-class bodybuilder, then in that case you can do all the steroids. Well, no, I shouldn't say that, but everything else. But other than that, you shouldn't worry about protein. The biggest animals are plant eaters, from elephant to rhino and other animals. And at this point, we want to say thank you for coming.
Absolutely. We actually went over our half an hour time. Some of the questions some of the questions that haven't been answered, I really, really appreciate your questions. I will answer them separately as a message to you. I'm happy that you guys were engaged and you joined us today in our messy kitchen.
Yes.
Which is okay. This is
by the way, I opened up all these beans. She wasn't very happy because they weren't cleaned up.
No, it looks fabulous. This is what we eat. Hey, really appreciate you supporting our book. This is more than just a project or a book for us. This is our life's work.
And none of this goes for us.
No, all of the profits of this book goes to our foundation, the Healthy Minds Initiative, which goes towards supporting communities, creating brain health workshops, creating pamphlets and educational material, telling people what they need to do not to end up in the clinic, not to end up in the hospital, so that they can actually be healthy. We get out of our hospitals and go into the community to teach people how to live a healthy life and not rely on us anymore. So if you support that, you support them. We really appreciate it.
And one other thing, if you want us to come to your communities, to your churches, to your synagogues, to your mosques, to your faith and communities, to your senior centers, to you name it, we're available. Just get the group together and we'll come and talk and have conversations for anybody who wants us there.
And I want to thank my daughter for arranging this videography, and she's right there to press all the buttons for us. So thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.